Greet each one this morning in our Savior's name. It's a privilege to worship with you this morning and to worship collectively. As Brother Randy was sharing to us how that God is the Creator God, and on the seventh day He rested. We need a physical rest in order to function properly. We do. But on that day of rest that we have established, or so-called the first day of the week, as the early church did, I love the opportunity to do a collective worship. But the day of worship, the day of rest, the Lord's Day, as we say it, it's special. But that is not enough. We need that every day. And I'm grateful for this opportunity. Like I said on Sunday, there's an additional layer of value in our spiritual lives to have this collective worship. But it's only, how may I say it? It has more depth and more meaning if we have the other days of the week also that spiritual worship with our Creator God. So this makes it meaningful, a new layer, a different depth. So this morning, I want to talk about God and family. Now, I want us to remember our past so that we can chart a way forward for the future. And that's good for us to do that on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. It's good for us to do it on Sunday, to stop and contemplate and consider what happened in our past week so that we can make some adjustments going forward, charting a course. And this time, I would like for us to remember the past of generations before us for the generations ahead of us. So it's a longer, wider scope. And so as we study history, it helps us to understand how that events in the past have shaped our present and how they will shape our future generation. Let's begin with our Sunday school lesson, the verse that I read. Samuel took a stone and set it between Mizpah and Shen and called the name of it Ebenezer, saying, "Hitherto hath the Lord helped us." What was he doing here? He was establishing a reference point, a visual reference point, so that the children of Israel would do what? Remember what? What had just happened? Remember God. Yes. Remember what God did. What did God just do? And how did He do it? With a thunder. This stone that, I don't have any, but the stone that Samuel put out there was to remember the God that helped them to this point, along with the details. It's in the Scriptures. I was blessed as I considered that it's an aid to remember. What stones are you and I placing, establishing, to tell the story to the next generations of how God established His kingdom in Grandpa's heart? Those are good things for us to consider. What are some ways that we can establish that by laying a stone? Should we go out and put a pile of stones out like Joshua did when they crossed the Jordan River? They layered up 12 stones to represent the 12 tribes that crossed into the promised land so that they would remember. When the Israelites crossed over into Jordan, and then it was the tribe of Manasseh. We are going to read it here. Numbers 32, verse 16. It talks about they were going across, and when they did, they established an altar to remind them. So we'll talk about that later. But what are we doing today to establish this value that we are living today based on the faith of our fathers that will lead our children in the future? Makes me contemplative and consider what I'm living today. It puts some effect and weight to every decision we make today. So, I would like to today have story time. And we'll have stories. We're going to read the scriptures first. But what we are intentional about today is to remember some of those things that happened years ago so that we can prepare ourselves today and make a path plain for our families going forward. Let's read in Deuteronomy chapter 6, which is the chapter that the children of Israel were given by Moses. One of the first messages that Moses preached to them, well, not one of the first, but one of the main ones that we often read and refer to, and I know we've probably memorized some of this, but I think it's some very important verses that we would do well not to forget. Stand with me as we read the whole chapter of Deuteronomy 6. Now these are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which the Lord your God commanded to teach you, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go to possess it, that thou mightest fear the Lord thy God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments which I command thee, thou and thy son's son, all the days of thy life, and that thy days may be prolonged. Hear therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with thee, and that ye may increase mightily, as the Lord God of thy fathers has promised thee, in the land that floweth with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. And thou shalt write them upon the posts of thy house, and on thy gates. And it shall be, when the Lord thy God shall have brought thee into the land which he sware unto thy fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give thee great and goodly cities which thou buildest not, and houses full of all good things which thou fillest not, and wells digged which thou diggest not, vineyards and olive trees which thou plantest not, when thou shalt have eaten and be full, then beware lest thou forget the Lord, which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Thou shalt fear the Lord thy God, and serve him, and shalt swear by his name. Ye shall not go after other gods, of the gods of the people which are round about you. For the Lord thy God is a jealous God among you, lest the anger of the Lord thy God be kindled against thee, and destroy thee from off the face of the earth. Ye shall not tempt the Lord your God, as ye tempted him in Massa. Ye shall diligently keep the commandments of the Lord your God, and his testimonies, and his statutes, which he hath commanded thee. and thou shalt do that which is right and good in the sight of the Lord, that it may be well with thee, and that thou mayest go in and possess the good land which the Lord sware unto thy fathers, to cast out all thine enemies from before thee, as the Lord hath spoken. And when thy son asketh thee in time to come, saying, What mean the testimonies, and the statutes, and the judgments, which the Lord our God hath commanded you? Then thou shalt say unto thy son, We were Pharaoh's bondmen in Egypt, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. And the Lord showed signs and wonders, great and sore, upon Egypt, and upon Pharaoh, and upon all his household before our eyes. And he brought us out from thence, that he might bring us in, to give us the land which he sware unto our fathers. And the Lord commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God for our good always, that he might preserve us alive, as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before the Lord our God, as he hath commanded us. Thank you. You may be seated. We could preach all morning from this subject. Did it come through various times, repeatedly, the value of rehearsing and telling and establishing the fact of why, of how God led us out of Egypt, how he led us out of a path of sin, how he led us out of a path of following selfishness. We can make that current for us today. How are we doing about sharing that testimony? Our testimony is powerful and meaningful and necessary and encouraging for us today. I believe it is. It's hugely important that we are responding publicly to each other, to our neighbors, how God is working in our lives today. There is few testimonies more powerful and more effective to the man on the street, to the man that comes to look at your truck, Leroy, that doesn't know the Lord or doesn't care to know about the Lord. I don't know exactly that situation. But as we have opportunity, we don't have to tell the people how sinful they are. Hey, man, you're drunk. Come on, change your life. No. We have to tell them what God has done for us. That leaves an impact. Yes, there may be time that God will ask us to share more distinctly, more directly. But as I look at this lesson here that he has here, he is telling them distinctly to do things, to do signs. Thou shalt bind them up for a sign upon thine hand. They shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. Everywhere you look, everywhere you see, every place you are should be a reminder of the greatness of God. Every opportunity as parents, we have opportunity in life to teach our children about God. Okay, so we have family devotion. We sit together and we read and we sing and we have Bible stories, we have bedtime prayers. Those are good. But it's more than that. It's an everyday life experience in everything we do. Can we see God in us, around us, everywhere? So that, why? Because you're going to a land of plenty. Things have been made ready for you. You're going from the land of traversing in the wilderness for 40 years, where your shoes did not wear out and where your same old clothes for 40 years, ladies. Same old, same old. He said, you're going to a land of change. A land where there's plenty. There'll be fields there. There'll be houses there. Houses full of all good things. Wells that you didn't dig. If you ever dig a well by hand, you understand the depth and the meaning of that verse. Wells, hand-dug wells, took weeks and were dangerous to dig. They didn't have to worry about that danger. They already had water. Vineyards already planted. When you develop a new piece of property, you are planting young trees and saplings, and you wait 2, 3, 4 years, 10 years till you get a good harvest. Of course, things are changing with the grafted varieties today, but nonetheless, it takes time for them to grow and to develop. You say you're going to a land where there's plenty. Olive trees that take years and years and years to grow and to develop and have fruit. And when thou shalt have eaten and become sleepy, that's why we don't eat breakfast in church in the morning, so we don't fall asleep. After lunch, we get a little sleepy, don't we? After supper time evening, we get a little sleepy because we've eaten, we've relaxed, we've worked, we've relaxed, we've eaten, and are full. There's plenty. There's plenty for everyone. Then beware lest thou forget the Lord. That's why it's important that we say stories and tell people and write our stories down. I am grateful today for stories that are written down so that we can rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. The school by the cornfield. We will have children's class here later on. I think we'll stick with maybe just school-age children, and maybe they'll just stay up front and we'll just have a children's class. All right. The importance of rehearsing and reminding and remembering what has happened. The children of Israel, as they journeyed, as they had come and were crossing the land, I'm going to read here in Numbers 32, verse 16, where they had crossed the Jordan River. And it says in verse 16, they came near unto him. This was here referring to the beginning of the chapter. Now the children of Reuben and the children of Gad had a very great multitude of cattle. And when they saw the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead, that beheld the place was a place for cattle. And they came and spake to Moses and asked them, requested, would it be possible that we could maybe stay over here and this would be our inheritance? And Moses admonished them and said, you can't do that. You're going to discourage the whole children of Israel. Just like those 12 spies when they went into the land to spy out the land. The 10 that came back, they discouraged the whole mob, and we lost our promise. We were left in the wilderness for 40 years. He said, you can't do that. You can't cause the children of Israel to sin. That's what Moses admonished them. Notice how they came back. This is what they said. And they came near unto him and said, we will build sheepfolds here for our cattle, and cities for our little ones, but we ourselves will go ready armed before the children of Israel until we have brought them unto their place, and our little ones shall dwell in the fenced cities because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return unto our houses until the children of Israel have inherited every man his inheritance. For we will not inherit with them on yonder side Jordan or forward, because our inheritance is fallen to us on this side Jordan eastward. What are the values that these men had? Did you see the values? What was driving them? What were their values? It records them for us. They were cattlemen. They had sheep. They wanted to provide for their families by giving space for their animals. They were concerned about their families. They said, our little ones will be in fenced cities. And what else do you see? Is there another one? Can you see it? They cared about their brethren. Those are three values that are strong values for God's people today. We care about our families. We want to provide for our families. That's important. We want to provide a safe place for them. We want to nurture them. We want to bring them to the truth and allow them in a safe environment. And we care about our brothers. It's brotherhood. And so it's recorded today for us to see. That little phrase just kind of struck me as I read there. He calls them our little ones. The tender part of their shepherd heart was coming out. How do we today portray and give those values to our families? But I believe it is if we understand our values, stop and consider why you are doing what you are doing. I remember when I was a schoolboy, I was in 5th grade. I was in 5th grade. And my teacher took us individually back into the utility room. The furnace was in there. There's a little room big enough for a little space there. And he took us back there and he wanted to talk to us about our personal lives and how are you doing. It's probably about Johan's age and Clarence's age. And he helped me evaluate my performance, my grades, my ideals, and how I'm doing. I don't remember all the questions, but I remember the teacher taking personal interest in me. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a grandpa. Do I today realize the impact and the value of doing that with my children? When we take time as fathers, leading our families, talking with our children one-on-one, giving them the space to share their hearts, their fears, their hurts, and help them and walk with them. If I could do something over in parenting, that's one of them. I didn't do enough of that. We were busy digging wells. Our little ones. We support, we protect what we value. They put their little ones in fenced cities because it was a value to them. They valued their family. Do I value my family that way? Do I give protection? Do I give that guidance? Do I show them the way to God? And remember this, we will lose what we don't remember. Simple. We're going to lose what we don't remember. How are we going to remember? By telling the story. Here a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to be part of our 50th year school reunion. And as we gathered together, and I met many of those original students, we began to share stories of things that happened in school and what we did, and just stories. And the past suddenly became alive. Things that I can't even remember to tell you today. But it was there. It was in the recesses of my mind. Things that I had forgotten. But as we share stories, it keeps that memory alive. And so that is what we would like to do this morning. We live our values. And as we were in the last weeks, established our first day of school and the Cornerstone Christian School, that was special. We did that because we valued it. We did that not because it was August and it was high time to have school. No, we had a value that was leading us. And I don't think we even gave it much thought that our local government may be frowning on us for having our own school. I didn't think about it till Chad mentioned it, that we should talk about the beginning of the parochial schools, the church schools. I was older when I went to school. I've told you this before. My dad did not want to send me to public school because my older brother had been to public school, and they were teaching in the 2nd and 3rd grade, they were teaching evolution. And Dad was frustrated with that. So I guess that was 1st and 2nd grade, because in the 3rd grade, they sent my brother to a local Wesleyan Methodist school, a church program, a church school, so that wouldn't have to be faced with the public education program. Where did my dad get that burden and that vision? He said, I'm not sending you to school, Delbert. I don't want you going to school. And I should have been going to school. I was 8 years old before I went to 1st grade, or right at that time. I wasn't too worried. I was scared of that big yellow school bus that came down the road. I didn't want to go on the school bus. So I was more the fearful sort. Anyway, where did my dad get that desire to train his children in that way? When we were growing up, Dad would always remind us and tell us how that he says, we are being taught so much more than what I was taught. We are responsible, and you are responsible differently than what I was. That was 40 years ago. Today, I am saying the same thing to my children. You are being taught so much more than what I was taught. You are so much more responsible going forward. Where did my dad get it? Where did I get it? Grandpa Henry was from Hartville, Ohio, was part of a very conservative setting, although it was very enlightened and very spiritual. They believed in the new birth, and it was, on that way, it was very good. Grandpa had some health issues, so Grandpa went to the doctor, his stomach issues, and the doctor said, Mr. Henry, what you really need for your stomach is a little bit of wine that would really settle the acids in your stomach. And so Grandpa Henry went home and began to use just a little bit of wine, and it just totally leveled out his stomach. It's like what we would call, kefir or kombucha today, or do the same thing. Probiotics that we use, papaya pills, those things. Back in those days, I don't know if they knew that. So Grandpa was using a little bit of wine, and it totally changed his health. He was doing so well. But as time went on, Grandpa Henry needed just a little bit more wine to get the same results. And so the first little cup that he took didn't quite give him the same results as it did 6 months ago, so he upped the dosage. And soon he was taking twice as much as what the doctor prescribed to get the same results. And it wasn't just extremely long till Grandpa realized he's becoming a drunkard. And he became an angry man. He became an angry dad to the boys. My dad would talk about how Grandpa would get angry. This is what took him to the Lord. He realized what's happening in his life. He found the Lord as his Savior. It changed his life. He no longer was an angry man. He was now concerned about the things of God. He wanted to worship God. He wanted God to serve God. He went to church and he began to tell the preachers, I want Sunday school for my children. I want my children to learn about God. I want my youth. And some of the elders would say, yeah, but we don't do that. You know, we don't have Sunday school. He said, I want my sons and daughters to learn about God. Well, we don't, the problem is then our young people will soon know more than us older ones. And Grandpa said, I want that. I want my young people to know more than I do. And so Grandpa did encourage that, and my dad was influenced by that. And I thank God for my grandpa that taught that. That's why when I was ready for school, he said, I'm not sending you to the public school. I want you to have a Christian education. All right, children, let's get on with the story here. Why don't you, how many school children? I think we'll just stick with the school children. Why don't you all come up and, shall we go right here? Over on this bench? I kind of felt like maybe the rest of the service, the children can just sit here, and that's why I'm not recommending the youngest ones come. Johan, aren't you in school? Travis? What? Boys? No. This is for schoolboys. This is for schoolboys my age. All right. I thought we had about 9. Oh, we got 12. 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10. Okay, very good. So this story is about the school in Buchanan, Ohio, Iowa. Okay. This was before church schools were very popular. This was happening in 1962, 61 and 62, which is 60 years ago. So when I'm telling you about when I went to school was 10 years later in the lower 70s. So church schools were then already beginning. So these children, this was an Amish group in Iowa, and they were having their own schools for years already, but it was right in the area when the public schools began to come. The public schools would come and pick up the children with school buses, okay? We've seen lots of school buses, all right? And as transportation was made available, the larger city schools, community schools developed, and the small country schools of America went away because it was much more efficient to teach them all in a large classroom, plus they were much more able to stay on top of the latest. So public school was really the push in those days. So this is the story about the school by the cornfield, okay? I'm not going to read everything. We would be here the rest of the morning, might anyway. So they had a teacher, and they went to school, and they had one-room school, and there had 1 or 2 teachers in there. I'm going to get to the first page. I want to start, okay? And they had a meeting there. There was a meeting in town, and the parents had heard about the meeting. The town officials were concerned about this little Amish school that was not coming to the big public school. So they went and sent and had a meeting, and the officials said, we're going to come out and meet you at the school. So here come the officials, and the school superintendent came out and met with the dads at the school and said, why are your children not going to the big school where we have in town? And they said, well, for many years, our children have come here to this little schoolhouse. It has done us well. Why should we change now? And the official said, well, you don't have the radio or television, so you don't understand how the world is changing. And we keep up with the latest news, and the scientists have discovered new and exciting facts about life. Oh, they said, but your science book says men came from monkeys. Yeah, but science taught us a lot more than that. Did you know there's a rocket that went up from Russia, went up around the world, and it took a dog with it, and we can go around the world, and this is great. What good does that do? Well, they said, don't you realize with science, whoever wins in science can rule the world? They were concerned about Russia back in the 70s. I remember well those days when our parents talked about we may not have the privilege of having our own schools because if Russia would take over. Many of you don't remember that, but I have vivid memories of that. They got nowhere with their Amish fathers. They said, no way, we're not interested. They went back in their car, went out the lane, and went back to town. And the justice of peace got involved, and he said, oh, those poor people, they go to their little own school, and the building needs to be fixed. And the teacher hasn't had any college education, and they still have their old textbooks, and they're just, oh, those poor people, if they would just know what we can offer them. Maybe we need to go back out and explain it to them again. Maybe they don't understand all the things. So the officials sent letters to each father who sent his children to the little school. They had another meeting. All the fathers came to the school, and the officials came. And there they began to talk. And he said, but they didn't get anywhere. So they left again. The officials left. That was the second meeting. The summer went by very slowly. Again, the officials came the third time. And they said, you didn't build a new schoolhouse. You didn't get a new teacher. You didn't even get a new science book. That's right, the father said, we didn't. We don't believe bigger is better or that newer is nicer. But the law says, the official said, that you must send your children to our public school. And the father said, whose law are we going to obey? We want to obey God's law. We cannot send our children to your school. Says, oh, okay. They went back to town, and then the justice of peace called for a meeting at her office and said, all you fathers that are not cooperating, come to this meeting. And so as they got to this meeting, the public school superintendent was there. The sheriff was there. The county attorney was there. And it was a stern meeting. Dan Borntrigger leans forward in his meeting, says, the Bible tells us to teach our own children. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go. The public school superintendent replied, the Bible also tells you to obey the laws of the land. The justices of peace added, until you obey the law and send your children to public school, each day you will have to pay $24 for each child who doesn't attend. The government pays us money for each student who attends our public school. Your children don't attend our school, so you cost us money. Besides, you're breaking the law. $24 a day, Bontrager said quietly. That's a lot of money, said the Justice of Peace. Yes, said Dan, that is a lot of money. So the Justice of Peace said, will that be cash or check? How are you going to pay your bill? And the father said, we will not pay that bill. And they left. Soon after that, the families decided, what can we do to be nice to these officials? It says, fathers hitched up their horses to a buggy and headed for town. Many of the fathers took with them vegetables their families had stored in their cellars. In town, they gave the vegetables as presents to the Justice of the Peace and to the other officials. And then they had another meeting. So they took them a gift. And there they are, back at a meeting, talking about, why don't you send your children to our school? There was continual dialogue. And so on Friday morning, November 19, 1965, a big yellow school bus bumped up the lane to the little school by the cornfield. And the country lawyer was along, and they were going to take the children to school. He said, they were given the principal of the big school a new job, or truant officer. The nurse came. The students at little school heard the big bus jolt to a stop outside. They looked up from their lessons. The students saw the police walking toward the little schoolhouse. The police formed a line along the path that led to the big yellow bus. Then the pupils and teacher Katie heard heavy footsteps. The sheriff walks into the entry of their little classroom. And he goes in and tells them that they are to go to the bus. All of you children, walk outside and get into that school bus. Teacher Katie told the children, you are dismissed. Yes, I certainly can. There's the picture of the sheriff in with the school children. No, that was in the meeting. All right. Teacher is in the classroom having school. The sheriff comes in and says, all of you into the bus. We're taking you to the public school. The teacher says, you are dismissed. The parents were outside waiting. Couldn't do anything. Their mom and dads were out there watching. They couldn't do anything. On the way out, and there's some discussion on who said it, but they think the teacher said, children, run for the cornfield. And the children just beeline for the cornfield, ran away. They ran toward the cornfield beside the school. As third grader Arlene Yutzi squeezed through the barbed wire fence, her dress snagged on the wire. With big eyes, she looked back at the policeman and the other officials racing toward her. She tugged on her dress. There was a ripping sound. Then Arlene was free, running through the cornfield with a big tear in her dress. She heard scampering footsteps all around her and knew the other students were running with her. The truant officer, which was like a school policeman, stared at them. This wasn't part of his plan. He lunged forward. He managed to catch two of the students. 13-year-old Emmanuel cried when he found the truant officer had grabbed him. Beside him, a tiny first grader girl sobbed. The officials talked together. The children disappeared. They couldn't find them. We will let both of these students go, they decided. to the parents and the teacher, Katie, they said, tell all of your students to come back to school. We won't try to catch them anymore today. So they went back to their office. The students came one by one out of the cornfield back to school, and they had school. The officials went back to town and said, they tricked us. Let's trick them. Let's go right back out. So they sped back up. They ordered the students to leave their desks and walk out the door. The officials marched the students out to the big yellow bus. The engine on the big yellow bus growled louder and louder as the bus sped up. Inside the bus, the children from the little school sat quietly. At the big public school, they studied for the rest of the day. Then the bus took them back to their homes. So they actually went to public school that day. And here's all the newspaper articles that are recording it. The next Monday, the children again walked or rode in buggies to their school by the cornfield. This time, fear showed on their faces. Can you imagine? That would have been difficult. The school bus came back to the little country school. The officers came back in and tried to make the children go back to school. The truant officer grabbed one of the schoolboys. The boy held onto his desk. The truant officer let him go. The truant officer looked over at the schoolgirls. I'll put them on the bus, he decided. Out reached the officer. He grabbed one of the girl students. The other girl students saw what was happening. They reached out. They locked arms with the student that the officer had hold of. Then one after the other, the girls locked arms with each other. The officer had to let go. Slowly, he and the other officials walked out of the classroom. They walked past their mothers. They pushed their way back through the group of fathers. A little further away, they passed a row of horses at the hitching posts. At the entrance of that school that morning, someone had parked their team of horses in a big wagon across the road, across the lane, so no one could come in, but the officials moved it. The officials are frustrated. What are we going to do with these Amish children that do not go to school? They just said, we're going to the State House, and we're going to go talk to the state attorney. And after they met with the state attorney, they went over to Governor Hughes' office. He said, well, so what can I do for you? He said, there are 37 students who will not come to our big school in the town, the public school officials lamented. They go to their little old school by the cornfield. Their teacher didn't go to college. Their parents claim to teach them many things that can be taught by books, even some wisdom from past generations. We have tried everything we know to get them to come to our public school. Now we have come here to ask for soldiers. Soldiers, the governor said. Yes, we need 37 soldiers from the National Guard, the three officials explained. We need 37 soldiers because there are 37 students. And the governor said, you need 37 soldiers to get 37 more children to attend your school? Yes, one for each child, the officials said. Then these children can't run off into the cornfield when we try to put them on the bus. The three officials waited eagerly for the governor to speak. The governor smiled. He said, I'm trying to imagine needing soldiers to make children attend school. Perhaps something is wrong with the children. Possibly something is wrong with your school. Either way, I will not send soldiers from the National Guard to make these children go to a school their parents do not want them to attend. From my understanding, these parents have a reason to send their children to their own little school. They believe God wants them to do this. Didn't the school fathers ever explain this to you? Oh, yes, the school board members admitted. But the law says, the governor interjected, if a law puts people into jail because they wish to serve God, that is a poor law, the governor explained kindly. If we need to change a law to help people who wish to serve God, it must be done, the governor continued. I will look into it. Now leave these fathers and mothers and their children alone. So now at the top level of the state, they finally reached some level of understanding. But the officials were not happy. They owed them a big bill. The justice of the peace and the other local officials told the school fathers, you haven't paid your fines. Now you owe over $10,000, which would be to the equivalences of $100,000 or more today. See the picture? What's happening? There was a lot of money in those days, and so police came to the Schwartz home. They found that the Schwartz family had gathered corn for the winter for themselves and for their animals. The police and their helpers emptied 960 bushels of corn from the corn crib. How many wagon load is that? Ear corn, probably. From the local bank, police took the little money the Raber family had saved. Later that day, the Raber family looked up as police cars drove in the lane. Behind the cars lumbered a truck. The police and their helpers walked over to the pig pen. They called the pigs in, picked up sticks. They chased 5 of Raber's pigs into the truck, and they all drove away. 60 years ago, because they wanted the privilege to teach their own children. And we go to school, and we don't even know these stories. Hardly. Okay. The governor did come out, and he did meet with the people in town and help them understand that the state will change that law. They should no longer do that to any of these children. One day, soon after the law passed, Dan Borntrigger walked slowly into the little schoolyard. His keen ears scanned the fields of where the corn had stood. Now the ears had been harvested, the corn stalks cut down. Dan looked at the little schoolhouse and again at the fields. I know how much corn these fields gave, he mused, but only the passing years will tell the results of the stand we took here at this little school, and only eternity will show the yield of souls. Note here in the back, there's a lot of data, research, and so on. Note, to make this a children's book, the author changed or condensed some chronological and some happenings. For instance, there were actually 2 private schools involved in the events covered in this book. Some names have been changed. That was in Buchanan, Iowa. Another situation in Akron, Ohio, which is our state up northeast. A family chose to homeschool, and this was in August of '62. And due to unrest and due to the fact that it was not accepted in that time, the family moved to Virginia. The dad came home to visit his mom in the Ohio region, and the officials got word that he's back. They had a warrant out for his arrest because they were homeschooling their children. They went and caught him and put him in jail. I think he was in jail for 10 days or a little while. Then they went down to Virginia. The mom was also under arrest. That was relatively short time ago. Do we as parents realize the privilege that we have today? If we don't remember history, we won't regard our own school as very precious. There's no doubt in my mind that those parents knew and why and what they were teaching. What did they teach the loudest? Did they teach non-resistance? I doubt it that it was in the Amish school curriculum. They taught it by their life. You can stay right there if you like. I'll go up here now. remembering our past so that we can chart a way forward. None of us have really experienced that. Do you understand a little more why it was a little fresher in my dad's mind on when they were worried about the Cold War era and communism was a huge threat? Culture is established by the values we live. So we could talk a lot of things, children, but I want to encourage you. Do you like to read? How many of you, when you are reading, are bored? No. Did you know, moms and dads, if your children are bored, quite likely they're not readers. What happens when you become readers? You love to learn. You love to explore other countries in a book. Did we just go to Iowa in a cornfield? Were you in the cornfield with these children running? Could you feel that? The girl that tore her dress has it today in her possession. Think of it. You were in that story. Susan often tells me how her dad was a reading. He loved to read, and they were having Sunday company, and her mom said, "Dad, would you please don't forget yourself when you're having company today. You know, be sociable and talk with them. Don't be picking up that book or that magazine and start reading." He'd forget himself, and he'd have a book on his nightstand or his end stand and talking with his friends. He'd pick it up, and, next thing you know, he was reading a story. He loved to read. How many of us grew up with family reading time? Yeah. I have fond memories of Mom reading to us stories. Back in that day, the books that we read were very few Anabaptist written books. Anabaptist authors were on the market at that time. So we had in our possession, in our school, these books. Remember these stories? Dave does. Step by Step, Our Heritage. They were mostly in our library for reading because at that time Rod and Staff had come out and was providing literature. I have memories of my dad, before I went to school, went to Crockett, Kentucky to help them build a building at Rod and Staff Publishers at the very, very early stages. I started school in first grade with Rod and Staff. I had Rod and Staff material. Dave was too. We become what we read, or it influences us to become something different. Today, may I encourage us to continue reading? This book, Shepherding a Child's Heart, has helped me, by Ted Tripp, has helped me in so many ways. Just really challenged me in raising my family. Do you read these? Calvary Messenger, Sword and Trumpet. Sword and Trumpet is a good book. I typically gravitate back to the section where it says counseling from the Word. I think, Dave, you like to read that too, don't you? Or some?
I don't read it as much, Joe.
No, I don't quite as much. But biographies of people, pastors, faithful men, much of that's here. But the church's role in counseling you, excellent articles written for the Anabaptist people, and how God's Word is our counsel. Youth, do you read this book? You have a new author. It's a good one. Read his blogs. Character is developed by reading and by doing. A learner, if you are learner students, you will want to duplicate those values in your life. So I trust, as we consider history, I will read yet from Frank Reed, who talks about the brethren in the Mennonite histories that have traveled on parallel tracks. And he says these have similar beliefs. Same groups have carried truth into the world. And he says something interesting. He says Mennonite history has a martyr motive because it has a martyr history. For Mennonites, the world is an unsafe place that may at any time choose to turn against you. For the Brethren group, with no martyr history, the world is a safe place. Specifically, as a result, the Brethren have few schools. They have been comfortable with public education in North America, not so the Mennonites. They have many schools, grade schools, high schools, and Bible schools. Decisions along the years have also impacted the groups. Many decisions have been made. Recently, one of those decisions has become more apparent. These groups began with a very high view of the Bible and with integrity of the individual. Integrity was a primary factor in both of these groups. Anyway, he goes on and talks about the shift from integrity to loyalty and so on. They began to emphasize loyalty to the group. Loyalty began to trump integrity. The rest, as we say, is history. I found that interesting. Suffering brings an additional value or an impact on what I believe. Did our fathers in Buchanan, Iowa suffer willingly? Its mark is on us today. Let's not forget it. Let's not forget it. So, what are we doing today? What course are we charting for our children today? Let's remember this. How we live today is the history and stories of tomorrow. Let's remember always. And thank God for the privileges we have. Kneel with me for prayer.